During the crisis which disrupted the Upper Niger Malinke in the 19th century, the influence of El Hajj Umar played a more important role than it did in Futa Jion. The Fulani, which had drawn inside their own frontiers and left the enemies to their own devices, the influence of the Futa was however maintained through the city of Kankan, which kept its intellectual and commercial links with Timbo, though its direct relations with the coast were equally vigorous along the Suleiman route. Content to be fully independent, the Dyula capital followed a policy of great prudence under Mamadou Sensu Kor Mamadou Kaba, a nephew of Alpha Kabin. The expanding Dyula population and growth of trade enhanced the prestige of the city well beyond the forest fringe. Its only serious handicap was the temporary closure of the downstream area of the Niger during the hostilities against Tambabwawi. There was not, however, much internal harmony within the city. The prestige of the Kaaba was eclipsed by the Sherifu, who had come from the Middle Niger in the 18th century and had maintained a close link with the Moorish countries from where they had received the wind of the Kandira. This difficult situation, together with the established tradition of the Dyula, made Kankan unwilling to take up arms against the animist chiefs, who were its neighbors, even though life became increasingly unpleasant for the wealthy trading class who had to put up with the local laws and traditions. This somewhat precarious balance was upset by El Hajj Umar. He visited Kankan in 1842 and persuaded the Kaaba and the families of the political class to adopt a new religion, whilst the Sharifu and a majority of the Marabout families remained faithful to the Kandera. Alpha Mamadou, a grandson of Sensu, followed by El Hajj Umar as a Talebu, and in the 1850 or 1851 took a contingent from Kankan to fight in the siege of Tamba. This young man became the Mansa of the Bati in the following year thanks to his powers of persuasion to inflame the Daula that they decided to try to impose their law by force of arms. They stated a series of small wars against the Kandu and the Sankaran and the Kanto of the Toran, their aim being to extend their frontiers, shatter their neighbors' pride, and force them to respect the trading routes. So the traders became warriors in a sense that the crisis came at the same time as El Hajj Umar's exploits in the Western Sudan. The threat they offered was considerable. Their pagan neighbors did not accept the situation meekly. The Fula of the Wasalu, for example, reacted with swift and astonishing violence. A young vassal chief of the Bate, Daera Sendibi of Ulumde, saw in a dream of a spirit who revealed to him a dance of possession which would allow him to pick out those warriors who would be invincible. This war of the sons of dreams became an absolute tidal wave which in a few months swept over the whole of the Wasulu and reached the very gates of Audiene and the land of Barguani. A few years later, Daera attacked Kankan. The city's downfall would have strengthened his leadership, but he died during the battle and his army broke up immediately afterwards. The Wasuli fell into a state of anarchy which persisted until two great chiefs, Kandisori or Lasero and Adiyegbe of the Diatulu, restored order. Alpha Mamadou took advantage of his situation to throw himself boldly into holy war. It is clear that he wished to intimidate El Hajj Umar, but the later victories had carried the conqueror northwards, and the Daula from the Malo had to rely on themselves. Disappointment soon followed. They first tried to crush the growing power of Ajibe, but the coalition of the Wasulu and the Lower Tarun, the united behind Nantinin Famadou Karuma, proved too strong for them. The eastern route was closed, and it was in vain that the Kaaba turned into the Touring in hope of joining the Sisi and forcing a way through the forest. Alpha Mamadou then turned northwards, towards the Takulu outposts. The latter held the Bare, but Alpha Mamadou was unable to overcome the resistance of Kita from the Dauma, as they were quickly reinforced by the kinsmen from Kangaba. These events occurred between 1864 and 1865. Soon afterwards, El Hajj Umar died, and the Mansa was not long in following him. The discouraged Kaba decided to give up their desire for conquest. Alpha Mamadu's son Karumbu or Mori, Dayamba Fatim Mori, was a pious man, but his brothers were ardent supporters of the new imperialism and they were soon involved in more fighting. Umar Ba took up the struggle towards 1870 in order to open up the Kisi-Kola route. Now, this entailed a preliminary defeat of the Kandu from the Sekaran. But after some success, he died at the Bagbai in 1873 with most of his army. Up until now, the Kaaba had been overwhelmingly successful, but they suddenly found themselves in a desperate straits. For every Kaju along the banks of the Niger from the junction of the Malo to the Korasu united against them. The Dyula capital was the blockade, and the city was soon in the most alarming situation it had known since the time of the Tambabwawa. It was saved only by the intervention of the Somali, whose influence had by now spread all over the southern lands where the main events were taking place. 1,000 years of West African history.